Welcome back to the next part of a video that I did that was pretty well received, and we're talking about the coaster wars, or as I like to call them, the manufacturer wars. That's what we're talking about today, and how we might see the industry change in the next few years. Now, before we start things off, I want to mention just a super tiny side note that is not important. Basically, on that previous video, I got a lot of comments saying how I was technically wrong in that Magnum XL200 started the wars. Trust me, I know that Kings Island with racers was pretty important. However, I don't think that was the coaster wars. I regard that as more the coaster renaissance. The coaster wars was really with Magnum, and then the coaster rebirth was with Racer at Kings Island. Alright, anyway, let's get right into it. So I mentioned in that last video that this is less a coaster war and more of a pecking order forming around the manufacturers. B&M is making a shift to Asia, and not that they're leaving the US and Europe entirely. I mean, we're seeing Mako, Hershey Hyper, as well as Firebird and Yukon Striker in 2019. In Asia, though, they have had a few projects in 2018. They have 2 wing coasters and a Hyper solely in China for 2019 alone, and we have no idea what's in store for 2020. The reason that we're seeing B&M back out of the US is simply because their coaster type I don't think really is needed that much anymore. Only parks that need filler are going to buy from them, and they've had 2 decades to do that, so only very new parks or undeveloped parks will need the B&Ms. And most major parks now need a good number 1, so RMC, Intamin, and SNS are more on the market. Speaking of RMC and Intamin, these 2 manufacturers seem to be intertwined in their coaster type, and it's going to be really interesting to see which one comes out on top. Now, I know right now RMC seems like it's winning by a ton, but Intamin is really creeping up on us. I personally think that the Rocky Mountain construction fad is ending. To be honest, they are running out of rides to convert, and we really just don't know how popular these single rail coasters will be. I mean, RMC seems to think that they will be really good, but we still don't know. I could be wrong, but I do think that Intamin will do a very good job of bringing in the big guns in terms of competition with RMC. The American Dream Mall, Busch Gardens 2020 Shuttle Coaster, SeaWorld's 2020 Launch Coaster, the 2 France and Belgium projects, as well as a couple more obscure projects in Asia, RMC is getting outnumbered by Intamin. Intamin is for sure back in town. SNS is interesting to watch as well. It's hard to conjecture what they have in store, mainly because I don't know how Max Force and Steel Curtain will turn out. They could be really good additions, or they could be failures due to mechanical errors. I rode Extreme Rusher at Happy Valley Beijing, which is similar to Max Force, and it did pretty well on operating times, but I mean that was 1 day at 1 park, so I have no idea. Mach is doing very well, very well, with many projects all around. I do think that they will very gradually decline in popularity. I think they have yet to peak, but they will start to decline due to Intamin possibly taking out some of their steam with the launch coaster. Parks will be pretty hesitant, I think, to build more Intamin coasters simply because their past ones have been pretty odd with their downtime. Now let's talk about wooden roller coasters. Unlike the launch coaster and diversity game, it's been pretty split mainly between RMC, GCI, and the one and only Gravity Group. Now, speaking of Gravity Group, they're doing pretty well. I think a lot of people take it for granted. In 2018, we saw 2 family coasters. Of course, in 2019, we're seeing Kentucky Flyer. And then in China, they are thriving with these clones. Oh my gosh, people don't talk about how great that they are doing in China and Asia in general. A lot of people take this manufacturer for granted, but I do think that they will continue to be unique to the family wooden coaster genre. Great Coasters International is expanding with their hybrid inverting dueling model, but to be honest, we don't even know a lot about it. We do know that these new trains can go about double the steepness and can go backwards, but we don't know anything else. The mini model they showed at IAAPA dueled and was massive, but I don't know if they can make a smaller non-dueling model. They said that if parks wanted it for 2019 or 2020, they would make it. Obviously, for 2019, that's a no, but 2020 it's kind of likely. I mean, if parks want it, I'm not sure what the market is here, considering converting an older wooden roller coaster is much cheaper, takes less time, and if it's a proven success, it's going to be hard for GCI to enter the competition against RMC. Honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if RMC decides to slow down or even discontinue the topper track model. They have said that they much prefer building iBox Iron Horse coasters to topper, and they are cheaper. And the general consensus is that their hybrid models are smoother and generally better when looking at Steel Vengeance and Medusa Steel Coaster, etc. It's not that the topper track model is bad. I mean, my personal favorite coaster is Lightning Rod after all, but the Iron Horse treatment and iBox model just seem more efficient. We're seeing the first ground-up hybrid by Rocky Mountain Construction in 2020 with Zadra at Energylandia. I won't be surprised if we see more coming. Another thing we're seeing is China being more and more important. Of course, China is going to be the breeding grounds for new B&M coasters, and I hope to see more manufacturers test out new models and out in Asia. We're seeing this with B&M. They're building these dive coasters that have a different seating arrangement. The first B&M wing coaster was in China. Then, of course, we're seeing the first B&M Hyper in China this year. So, partly Japan and China seem to be getting a little bit more traffic. I mean, I think we see this cycle sometimes where, for example, S&S went to China and they tried out their game with their launch coasters and then came to the US. We could see the same cycle with B&M. I guess you could describe the West and Asia as trading manufacturers. S&S and Vekoma were the main manufacturers in previous years, while B&M, RMC, and Intamin are trying out their game now in a broader sense. So all in all, my main thesis is that the coaster wars aren't so much as I think more manufacturer wars, and I think it's an important point many people aren't talking about. Now, we are not in the midst of it now, but I think that 2020 and onwards will be very good for roller coasters.